I remember being a kid and having dreams, like daydreams about flying, where I would close my eyes and imagine my arms out, skimming across the ground, literally flying like a bird. For years, those dreams kept me going. And then I found a place where those dreams came true. Tucked away in the northwest corner of Georgia, just down the road from Chattanooga, Tennessee, is the small town of Trenton, home of Lookout Mountain Flight Park.
All right, well, let me tell you about the beginning of hang gliding in this immediate area. Bob Wills became the first person to fly Lookout Mountain. He flew off of Sunset Rock successfully. My understanding is a week or two later, Dick and Don and Dennis and Rick Trimble went up to Sunset Rock to fly, and Rick flew first, and his flight was, maybe a second or two.
This is called McCarty's Bluff. McCarty owned it. A man got killed up here that lived in a trailer in McCarty's pasture, and he couldn't be party to people flying here after he got killed. So he offered it for sale.
Dick Stern, Don Guess, and Tracy Knaus went to purchase the McCarty's Bluff because Mr. McCarty was getting scared after there had been a fatality there.
Yes, so Dick Stern and Don Guess were tree topper president and officers, and they were big on pioneering sites, and they pioneered this site. The other partner was Tracy Knaus. He was the tree topper president. Tree toppers didn't want to buy it, so Tracy bought it, and he then got Bill Bennett and Larry Newman involved with it. They bought Lookout Mountain Flight Park, and they bought a small LZ down below. They called it Airspace Inc.
They went on behalf of the club to buy it. Ultimately, the club didn't have enough money. Tracy could come up with the money, and so he ultimately bought it, which turned out to be a fantastic thing, but it ticked a lot of people off.
My take of it is that the tree toppers at that time just thought, well, the property's come up for sale, and we'll just go somewhere else and fly. But there was a little bit of bad blood because the Tree Toppers Club and the people that probably first developed the site now either had to pay or, join somebody else's entity, and it wasn't just a free site to run off the side of the mountain.
It turned out to be a great thing because on one hand, you've got what ended up being Matt's business, Lookout Mountain Flight Park, the biggest flight school in the world and one of the best flight parks in the world. On the other hand, you've got the tree topper sites, particularly the one at Dunlap, and that is a world famous site in the Sequatchie Valley. So it's all good. People had a little war for nothing.
The best was that we have two active places because that just means more pilots in general.
Larry Newman's was bought out by Dave Murchison, and so the three of them owned it. They put on One America Cup here. That was a competition with all the countries involved that had hang gliding as team sport.
And Tracy put together the American Cup, which was first called the America's Cup, had to be changed. So that was in 1978, 79, and 80. One of the guys on the Japanese team.
Oh my gosh.
Larry Kroom, I think, Canada. One of the Brits.
That's me.
Fantastic.
So, but wait, there's more. I was a pilot for the American team the first year, a judge the second year, launch director the third year. I'm official, y'all. I'm Tim Cocker, and what else? So anyway, this was my guest book for the 1979 American Cup party at my house. Don Guess, one of the founders, he and Dick Stern, Dick Heckman, Keith Nichols, May Guess, Donna Guess, Tracy Knoss, Becky Stern, all the big kids. This is a who's who of hang gliding back in the day. Around 1980, Matt came down, became the general manager or the manager of, I believe, airspace, and he took it to new heights. These were all my flying buds back then, and there's Matt right in the middle.
Oh, wow. Are you in here?
I took the picture.
Oh.
I took all of these. This is on the front page of the Decatur Daily, which was a town near the first flying site in Alabama, which I found. This is at the 78 Nationals.
Look at those young
That's
people.
me. That's Dennis Pagan. You know who he is.
Oh yeah.
He and I were tied for first until the last heat, and he got national champion. I got first place loser. So I was the first in the Southeast to get a hang five, and Dennis was the first in the Northeast to get a hang five. It was a secret society. These weren't even published. That's me.
That's Tim.
And I'm that one and that one, and that's Matt. He and Robin both signed my 1980 guest
cool.
list. This was January 4th, 1976. The wind was blowing 25 to 40.
Holy smokes.
It was below zero wind chill. I don't remember if I gave my camera to somebody or if somebody took these and gave them to me or whatever, but it's a launch sequence in my all-time favorite glider, my Ole 160. They were, I think the Southern California Hang Gliding Association published these. Just about every magazine ever printed in the United States on hang gliding. From the, this is all American Cup stuff.
This is the old ramp. Dad told me about it.
Yeah, that's the old, that was the original ramp.
The first concrete ramp was built by those guys and a guy named Bruce Short in 1976. Had a picture of the state of Tennessee, and then it had TTT, and then it had the people that signed it. Launch ramps originally here before 76 were all wood. The locals used this for drag racing out in front. They didn't like the hang gliding activity, I guess. Enough of them didn't like it that the ramp got burned down a few times. So that's why they went to concrete.
How excited are you right now?
About playing a pre-war Martin?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I've never played one, so I don't know how excited I should be. I hear they're pretty special. I hear you're pretty special.
We're gonna need some vocals.
It's raining just like Georgia springtime. Even feel the mist in my own eyes. Lord Jesus, wash my blues away. It's all I have to pray. Sometimes I feel like giving up. Sometimes I feel like growing old. Sometimes I feel like leaving this shady town, going home. It's raining just like Georgia springtime. You can feel the mist in my own eyes. Lord Jesus, wash my blues away. It's all I have to pray.
And then Dave came out to came out to the Outer Banks, and he was telling me, he was at my house, and he was telling me how, you know, they were losing money, quite a bit of money. And so asked me what I would do. So I built him a business plan. He really liked it and submitted it to the other owners, and then they wanted me to be involved in it. I just sold my water sports business, so I had some money, and they had a lot of debt. So I satisfied the debt and took a small amount of money, $100 a week actually, to work here for a year. And I said, after a year, you can pay me back the money that I put into it to get you out of debt and to keep this place going, and I'll walk away. Or you can give me 25% of the business. By 87, I bought all the partners out. The rest is history.
My name is Mitch Keebler. I started flying hang gliders in 1981. I think Matt Tabor had just bought this place the year before. And I flew hang gliders from 1981 till January of 1988. And then I quit hang gliding for 30 years. And I came back about 4.5 years ago and started flying again. So flying here in the early 80s, this entire facility was not here. Where we're sitting today was not here. The field was a third of the size from what it is today. You had to have you had to make a gap through the trees to get to the landing field. There was nothing up here except a little shop.
And then in 1989, I was playing folk music and was in Atlanta and saw an ad for hang gliding at Lookout Mountain. And I told my girlfriend at the time, who I was playing music with, who was going to become my wife, I told her that we should go up and check it out. And that's how I found out about hang gliding, was through Lookout Mountain. And we signed up for lessons. We went out to the training hills. And that very first day, I still remember vividly, you've got this big 50-pound thing on your shoulders, you're connected by straps. Like in a sailboat, you can hear cables hitting aluminum, and you can hear the Dacron sail flapping. You hear flap, flap, and clank, clank, and you've got this helmet on. You feel ungainly. And then you have to start running down the hill, and it's just like, ka-ding, ding, 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 whoosh. And you're in the air. I just got goosebumps.
I think, yeah. And now it's going to want to come up as I pull this one.
Does it feel okay?
Yes.
It's a little awkward, a little heavy, but you're doing great. Yeah, tighten your beaner when it gets tight. What we're going to do is check our leg straps. How are you feeling?
Good.
Over. And that turns our center of gravity one way or the other. You feeling good? Holding it, stand up tall and straight. Ooh, you feel that wind coming right into your face? It's gonna start floating. Now pull with your body. Yeah, come on. You're flying it. Look at that. Look at that. Well, a bunch of years ago, I had a young lady out here, and when she was 13, she was able to pick the glider up and handle it. She was super confident and comfortable and strong, and we threw her off the mountain. At 13 years old, I had to look at a bunch of our tough male students and say, you guys all see how that little girl just did? That's what I need you guys to do. It's almost time. Right on. There we go. We can stop.
How excited are you right now, Adelaide?
It flew! It flew! And then you grab hold and put yourself back on the ground. But you flew! We've got video. It's on video. Your feet were off the ground.
Somebody jumps off the training hill for the first time. They fly off the training hill. That's what I call an oh wow moment.
When people think of hang gliding, they imagine something like this. But it often looks like this.
When we started doing this, we were both working at NASA. Used to be NASA engineers, both of us. And I remember telling people at work that we were doing this, and people immediately thought, you guys are lunatics, like you have to be crazy. And I couldn't quite understand because the beginnings of hang gliding were at NASA. So I kept trying to explain to people, you fear what you don't know. But once you train, and there is a proper training, you don't go off the ramp without knowing what you're doing. We are not crazy. There are crazier things like snowboarding.
This is something that I always wanted to do, and I started essentially Googling it and say hang gliding, and I found out about Lookout being close to home. I looked at the training, the place, and I said, I'm doing this. I was signing up for the full deal. And I came home and I told Carolina, I'm doing this, I like to do this, I like to try it, so I'm signing up for the full training program. And she said, sign me up, I like to do it as well.
He didn't believe me. He's like, why? And I'm like, because if you can do it, I can do it. It sounds like fun.
So I called the office and I said, well, my wife wants to do it, but she's never, she doesn't know what this is all about, and I always want to do it, so let's just give her like the weekend package or something where she can try it out. We don't need to sign her full training. And I told her that, and she was mad, and she was like, how come you didn't sign me up for the full
we
training?
get to the hills, and he's the VIP guy, and I'm like the weekend edition, and I'm like, what does that mean? I want the same package you have. So, he still didn't believe me. I'm like, why not? I mean, this is fun.
We got her all signed up, and we did the whole training and went to the hills, and she would get off the ramp here, and she would just soar naturally.
To be able to fly and be free, and that's how it feels when you take that step off the ramp, and there is nothing but silence, and it's you and the wind, and maybe a bird comes by, and you're flying with the birds and flying with the friends, and it's just such a beautiful experience, and you are truly living the moment when you're flying. The first day, people were talking about Matt and Matt being the owner, and I ended up asking him, like, who is Matt? And there was Matt, and I was like, so you're saying the owner is here 7 a.m. with all of us setting up gliders, helping everybody? And they were like, yeah, that's Matt. I'm like, wow. So that was very shocking, and I thought that was amazing. And from then on, we learned that Matt is just pretty much everywhere.
Not just flying hang gliding for Matt, it's not just he's not just participating in the sport. Like one of his life's goals was to grow the sport and to build this, which is the world's greatest hang gliding park.
Matt, he's just a wonderful, wonderful person. He has a big heart. He is a businessman.
Okay, I know Matt since the 80s, and Matt's the sales guy. He's a good salesman, and he does a very good job of keeping this place going. And he has a major desire to keep hang gliding going. He's a good friend of mine.
Well, the way I see it is there's few guys like him that actually have a passion for something, go out there and make it happen. It takes a special kind of person to do that. It's just not anybody can do that.
It's amazing what through sheer willpower the guy did, because So much of this stuff, I'm sure people would have said, there's no way, man. There's no way you can do that. And he did it.
Matt is the sort of person, he's got the mind, the brain, and the drive, the ambition to be wealthy. And why he decided to do this instead, it sort of boggles my mind.
My dad was in the Air Force, and we lived all over the place. In fact, he flew P-51 Mustangs in World War II, and then he went into Air Sea Rescue after the war, stationed in Germany, and we moved all over the place and ended up retiring in New Hampshire, where I finished high school. Living in an Air Force base, I was always just mesmerized by aircraft. We were fortunate to live on a rental property that was a farm, and so there was a lot of mowing, and I was the chief mower. So things would break, and my father would show me how he would fix them, and I learned small engines from him. So I started working on lawnmowers, and that delved into a lawn mowing business. When I was about 14, I had a lawn mowing business, and some neighborhood kids worked with me, and we had a bunch of yards. With that experience, I worked at the Stewart Air Force Base, mowing the lawns there at 16. I worked at a gas station. I also taught snow skiing in the wintertime. That was my first recreation job, which I liked a lot. And then I taught swimming in the summertime, and worked at a restaurant as a busboy, and worked at the gas station. So I worked at like 3 or 4 jobs, just one right after the other, just managing which one's which. I owned a dive shop called the 35 Fathom Dive Shop, and we did wreck diving. We specialized in wreck diving, and I trained people to scuba dive on the Outer Banks, and it was in Nags Head, North Carolina. Now, driving to the dive boat, I would see people like pelicans in hang gliders. They'd be soar on the ridge, just their wingtips just feet off the ground, and just like the pelicans on the sand dunes and the waves. And I want to do that, I want to do that, I want to do that. So there was this ad in the paper, hang glide instructor wanted, will train if qualified. So I answered the ad. Well, that was my first lesson in a hang glider that day, and they hired me, and a week later I was teaching a class.
My name is Jen Richards, and I got into this world from a boy, but he's been gone for a long time, and I'm still here. I manage the pro shop. It's fun. It's like the brain center, I was a young lady and was with another woman, and everyone was real friendly and welcoming to the women. And then Matt approached me very soon after I got here and asked me if I wanted to work here. So I just started working here and training here and worked here for 16 years. I feel like I'm like a Matt whisperer, people think he's tough sometimes and he's hard, and sure, he is, but he's also soft and got a good heart in there, and we spoke each other's language. I knew how to handle it and handle him, and vice versa.
My name's Christian Thorson. I go by Thor. That's my nickname. I started hang gliding in 1979. I was in Germany. I bought a 1975 Flamingo Tallhofer hang glider. I found a gravel pit. I put it up, I jumped off, and I didn't fly. I was going to go to Telluride because I heard the flying was awesome there, because I missed the Alps a lot. And the Wisconsin boys told me, it's like, no, go to Lookout, you'll get to fly more all year long. And so I ended up here. And then I got a job with the NSA to go to the Kwajalein Islands. So I stopped here to fly again on my way to the Kwajalein Islands, and Matt convinced me to stay here. And that's what I did every day for 20 years, was teaching on the hills, running the whole flight school program, basically. I talked to my wife about this a lot, and she always tells me, your why you did that for 20 years is because when you were learning to fly and flying in Germany and Austria, a lot of people got hurt, a lot of people got killed, and I could stop that here. And that was my why.
Sounds cool, but I don't want to do it. I'm afraid of heights. I'm too big of a chicken. I wouldn't do it.
the freedom they experience up there is like being a bird. I mean, you know, how many of us get to experience that?
And I think it's amazing, and I think people who've got the nerve to do it should do it. So, I don't know, it was fascinating to me. I think that anything can be inherently dangerous. Driving a car can be. So I think that it's the person involved.
I mean, you know, life has its risk. We all calculate risk every day.
I first learned to fly in 1989 when I was with my ex, Ariane, and we were touring, performing music. And I flew for the next couple of years, and then our son was born, and I continued to fly. He was a baby, and we were living near Atlanta for the Renaissance Fair, and I went up one weekend to fly. I had just gotten a new glider, and it did not have wheels on the base tube, which my earlier glider did. And the hang glider, you normally get down into ground effect, then you let it bleed off until you're as slow as you can go, and then you flare and land. So I'm down in the ground effect, and I had a little extra speed for the trashy air, and the air was trashy, and I was a little too close to the ground, and it dropped me into the ground. My base tube hit, and I just went bang. The nose of the glider came over. I swung through, let go of the down tube so I didn't break my arms, but my head swung through and hit the keel of the glider hard enough that when I hit and dropped to the ground, I had to make sure that everything was moving before I tried to get up. Nobody was around because it was the middle of the week and nobody else was flying, so I laid there for probably 5 minutes making sure everything moved, and then I got up, got my glider off. I was pretty sore. I knew I hadn't broken anything, and as it turned out, I had probably bruised the back of my spine where those little knobs stick out. It had probably bent enough that I actually bruised those knobs, and I was sore for probably 2 or 3 weeks. And when that happened, it made me reassess. I just had a baby son, and we were being successful as touring musicians. Am I going to continue flying?
I feel like people see hang gliding as this dangerous extreme sport, but I think hang gliding can be whatever you want it to be. So if you want to do the 100-mile XC flight, like, you can do that. You can fly the cliffs in Hawaii, you can do whatever, or you can do my favorite thing, which is just flying at the beach, 50 feet off the ground, floating around. It's my favorite thing to do in a hang glider. Like, I love being high, but I feel like when I'm just above the ground, that's when I feel most like I'm flying. I don't know why that is, but I've always felt like that. Like, I love just hovering, like being able to come back down, being able to go back up. That, to me, is such a unique thing.
So I'm Adam Zachary Smith, and I'm from Middle Tennessee. As soon as I did my first tandem flight, I wanted to learn to fly. Like, when I learned how to fly, I saw the tandem guys out there, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I flew a bunch. That was my full-time job, flying hang gliders. My big thing was, like, I wanted to unlook out because I love this place. It's so special. I think that flying is a universal dream that almost every single person has at some point in their life, generally when they're a child. And then as they grow up and mature, they start to realize, okay, I wasn't born with wings, I can't fly, and that just becomes your reality. But it doesn't have to be. And it's just so cool to be able to fly. I just think everybody should try it at least once.
After our son was born, we continued to travel and make music, But it had been 10 years, and at a certain point, my wife's path diverged from mine. That meant I lost my marriage, my career, and half my life with my son, all at the same time. I was going through the process of having to deal with a divorce and child custody and all of that, and all of a sudden, I really needed that flying again in my life. So at that point, I bought a whole new hang gliding rig, and what really saved me is that you can't think about anything else while you're hang gliding. You can only live in the moment. So that's what I did, and I lived at different sites from Wallaby Ranch to Whitewater, Wisconsin, but Lookout was my home base. For something on the order of about 5 or 6 years, this spot right here with this concrete pad was where my first Airstream trailer was parked, where my son Galen was born, and then my fifth wheel with slide outs. I paid for this year round, and there were no cabins here, so I had a perfect front row view of the landing field. I would actually set up my approach down the field so I would land right here in front of my trailer, and this was my home.
There's a lot of people that, have thought about hang gliding a certain way, and once they take a tandem flight, they think it's a lot more reasonable, and then they get into the sport.
Yeah, after that first tandem, a little exposure in the air, and it was just like everything I'd ever dreamed about as a kid.
The one thing about what this is so exciting is the vulnerability that leads to courage.
A lot of people out here say, oh, I'd never do that. And after they do it, you can't get the smile off their face.
My first hang gliding flight ever was 3,200 feet for 45 minutes. Number one. I still get chills when I think about it. When we landed, my buddy picked me up and I said, take me back up. And I've been here since. 30 years in October. It's an amazing addition to anyone's life.
I'm David Miller. Started flying hang gliders here in '92, I'd say. I was a stand-up comic, but I also had just finished my pilot's license, and I was getting divorced, so I moved here, and Matt found out I had a pilot's license and asked me if I wanted to train to fly the tow planes, be a backup tow plane pilot. About 2 weeks after I got trained up, the tow plane pilot quit, took a job in Costa Rica. Matt asked me if I wanted to fly for the summer. He said, you're the manager, and I'm like, I just started here. Let these other guys who've been here for 5 years, flew tandem gliders every day, let those guys, and they're like, they don't want it. So I did, and it's been like 21 years.
We do way more towing than everybody else in the industry. I had one of our best pilots told me when he first got here, he said, I'll never go on this one.
Excited and very, very nervous. I'm afraid of letting go, falling down. Other than that, I'm fine.
I'm extremely excited and I can't wait, but I don't really quite trust it. I feel like something's gonna go wrong, or like one of those little teeny cords are gonna drop off. Like, how do I know this will hold me or something?
go over the things, and we're suddenly moving. And then we have to launch up, and especially when you're doing the wingovers, when you dive down, you feel like when you're going and landing on an airplane, you get risen up, except for it's much more exciting because you're actually, like, doing it. It's terrifying and amazing, but it's hard to tell when we're going left or right, or if we're like, at one point when we were doing the wingovers, it felt like we were completely tipped over, and I love it when we let go, because I honestly did not know how that would work when we let go of the plane, and then it was extremely loud, and then we just like sink down. It was terrifying. I love it.
So, people often talk about how dangerous is hang gliding. And what I tell people is I lived at hang gliding flight parks, including Lookout Mountain, for over 10 years. Lived on site. Flew every day it was flyable. Watched people fly every day it was flyable for over 10 years. And I saw 2 broken arms.
Well, it used to be very risky. In the early days, every week somebody you knew died. But the equipment became much, much better. And now hang gliding is on par with general aviation in terms of fatalities. They're very, very rare these days. It's much, much safer.
To me, hang gliding is the safest form of recreational flying there is.
Hang gliding in its heyday back in the 80s. Back then it was kind of in its infancy and there were more accidents. Today the technology is a lot better, the training is a lot better. We've learned a lot from each other's accidents.
People don't want that risk. So we're forever trying to make it easier and better.
I did see one person get killed hang gliding. The winds were a little bit southwest, and there was a kid who was 19 who was taking a tandem right before he did his first solo mountain launch. And he was either 2 or 3 gliders ahead of me in launch. And so people launched, and then they launched, and then another person or 2, and then I launched. I launched, and it wasn't really a day when you could stay up, so I was flying out towards the landing zone, and I could see the people below me who would launch first, and one of them was that tandem glider. And I was still a few hundred feet in the air, so they were pretty far below me, and they were setting up along the river to turn in and land, and for some reason, they never turned. And when I looked down, what I saw was the glider, the top of one wing hit a tree. And the glider went sideways and dropped straight down and hit. And I knew right then something bad had happened. And the instructor had actually landed on top of the student. And so the instructor survived, but the student didn't make it. And of course, for everybody who was there and everybody who saw it, it was kind of one of those defining moments. I spent the rest of the evening really seriously thinking about hang gliding and life and death. And not the next day, but the day after that, it turned out to be just this incredibly beautiful day. And I remember going up to launch and thinking about it. Am I going to set up my glider? Am I going to launch? And I did. So it was a beautiful, beautiful evening. The air was like glass. And I'm maybe 300 feet off the ridge, just smoothly flying down the ridge. And it was at sunset, so the sun was setting in the west off to my left. And on the right, the full moon was rising. And then a red-tailed hawk came up off of my right wing, maybe 20 feet away off my right wing, and literally was just there pacing me down the ridge. So it was the two of us flying together down the ridge with the full moon in the background. And at that moment, I decided that I was going to keep flying, that flying was in my life.
Well, I'm Diane Dandino, and I live in Lyons, Colorado. Well, I grew up in Michigan. And my dad and I flew radio-controlled gliders while I was growing up. And my favorite thing to do was lay on my back in the grass and watch the gliders go up in circles with the hawks and dreamed of being there. When I was 16, I heard on the radio that the Michigan State Hang Gliding Club was offering lessons to the public. And I flew down there, just took about 3 or 4 lessons and flew the sand dunes. So I probably had 5 or 6 flights that I've taken in my entire life. And then they planned a spring break trip to Lookout Mountain in Chattanooga, Tennessee. From 5 or 6 flights on a sand dune, my next flight was off Lookout Mountain. And I remember walking up to the edge with the wind blowing in my hair and looking over the edge and going, oh my God.
In early 2000, we had our noise crisis.
Prior to the tow program, it was pretty quiet, and then all of a sudden we had airplanes, and we were in an airport. And there were like 4 families that were not happy with that. And so they decided to go to the local county commissioners to try to get us basically to shut down the flight park.
So many of these people have grown, are generations deep here, you know? And then here's this operation of strangers going on out here doing something that they have no interest in at all.
So now the county took on the issue of the ultralights. The commissioners are starting to order new laws.
The sheriff was in on it, and some of the commissioners were in on it.
When we were at the county meeting during that, one of the neighbors said, "We can't even hear ourselves pray." And I wanted to stand up. It was a good thing God can hear you. But I didn't. But yeah, we went all over the county with decibel meters, next to tractors, next to a factory, next to the train, and the tugs were way down on the scale compared to all those things.
Merchants loved us. We were buying everything. We were eating there. We were buying gasoline. We were very popular there. It was just a few people that really weren't pleased with us.
They were doing things like on Saturday nights, whenever we had a party, they would raid us with like 6 cop cars, and they'd have roadblocks at each end of the road, right here, right down there, and went on and on.
You can see this one says neighbors can't solve problems without government interference. In other words, they felt that this could be solved as a neighborhood disagreement rather than involving the entire county.
And we petitioned the county people to vote out of office the people that were pushing their noise ordinance.
1,000 residents of Dade County were against the noise ordinance. In other words, sticking on our side.
And I had like lawnmowers with a circle with an X through it, and we put ads in the paper, and we had people at tables and outside of grocery stores and such.
It was a battle, for sure.
Anyway, all the people that were involved in attacking us, all the commissioners and the sheriff, all lost at the next election. We've had a much friendlier administration since then. So,
one thing with the noise ordinance that I give Matt credit for is every flight park in the country starts at their engines at 7 a.m. Matt starts his at 9 to be courteous to the neighbors. And he doesn't run them on Wednesdays, which is a church day in this neighborhood. So he's done a good thing there. I'm not sure many people know about that.
My name is Fauzia. I'm from America because I'm an American citizen, and I was born in Afghanistan. Me and my boyfriend was trying to go to Colorado for vacation to do hang gliding. And Jason was saying, well, I've never been to South. And he says, Fauzia, let's go there. So we came here, and I thought it will be like a vacation, but guess what? That's not what we are doing here. We are waking up 6 a.m. in the morning, coming on the small bunny hills for training, running down the hill. The gravity is attracting you towards the ground, and the glider is kind of making you fly. It's that balance you have to have, but you have to trust the glider, the gravity, and you just have to run. Launching a mountain is really setting free. I didn't even realize that I'm in the air so much above the ground, and there is trees, and that moment just froze for me. I had, like, when I was a child in Parachinar, that I'm flying in my dream. So then I realized this is the dream I'm living.
What are the things you had to deal with all the time that were difficult?
Men, I suppose. You know, you kind of have, when you're in like a heavily dominated male sport, you have to always prove that you know what you're talking about.
The first girl I saw flying ever was in Mexico, in Valle de Bravo. Her name is Sofia. And I've never seen a girl flying before, and I hadn't learned to fly yet. And I saw her launching, and it was such a beautiful thing. She's like such a ballerina, it looked like. I'm like, oh my God, okay, she can do it, I can do it.
To me, hang glider is like an equalizer. Everybody here becomes the same.
There's something about that spark of knowing what is yours to pursue. My youth was defined by it. That was that's all I wanted to do. It was flying. That's all I cared about.
Even just taking off and landing is such a magical feeling. Yeah, it's kind of feeling like Peter Pan. You totally touch it, and then you're not touching anymore. And even it's just for a few seconds in the dunes. It's just, amazing feeling.
It kind of feels like you're representing to the little folk. You just hope that those little girls who see you realize that it's something that they can do, that it's not just for guys.
We moved to Albuquerque, and the sandias are spectacular from the ground, but they are immensely more spectacular from the air. I wound up climbing up to, I think I was about 14,000 feet. The sun was starting to set, and there were some clouds. It was coming through the clouds, and the mountain just exploded with light. It was just the light, the white explosion, and coming through, and it was like shining on me and shining on the way the sun came through those clouds that were, I felt like it was like I became an angel flying. It was almost like a sense of peace that I had never felt before. It was like I was one with the glider, one with the mountain, one with the clouds, one with the sun. That was just one of many spectacular days, but that I really remember.
And we're always looking for locals. The locals are like the buzzards, hang out around launch. They're always looking for thermals. So I made it up to cloud base, and I was going back out towards the ridge, and out of the thermal you're sinking the whole time. So I'm sinking down towards the ridge looking for locals. And I see what I think are a couple of locals a little bit north up the ridge. And so I headed for the locals, and as I get closer I'm getting lower and lower till I'm back in ridge lift just about 300 feet above the ridge. And I get right up to where the locals are, and I find out it's not the local buzzards. It's a flock of broad-shouldered hawks, probably about 70 to 100 of them. And I fly into them because they're thermaling at this point. They've caught a thermal. I fly into the thermal with them, catch the thermal, and I start turning at the same radius they are. And it was sort of like they made room for me. They just sort of opened a little gap, let me in, and then I was part of the flock. And we're all turning, and just 20 feet away are 2 or 3 hawks, and over to the side are hawks, and above me are hawks, below me are hawks, and I'm literally part of the flock for about the next 5 or 6 minutes as we thermaled up in this thermal together. It was just magic, unbelievable. And we get to the top of the thermal, and they all at once turned and headed south. It was like 70 birds just went whoof and flew away. And I was like, bye, thanks for the ride.
And I was soaring for the first time and thermaling, and I could see the cloud moisture building right under the cloud into like a swirl, and that swirl moving with respect to me in a dance, and we were just dancing, and to me it just felt magical.
One other very memorable flight was at Glassy Mountain in South Carolina. I was pretty high, probably about 3,500 feet or something, and I heard an airplane engine, and it kept getting louder and louder, and I'm getting up in my frame, and I'm twisting around, and I'm looking, and it's getting louder and louder, and I'm going like, what the heck? And I'm getting really nervous. And I look down, there's a C-130 about 300 feet below me. I go like, what the hell? And then I said, well, usually if there's one, there's two. I'm going to land.
This was in a snowstorm. It was 20 degrees out. I've got it in my logbook. We couldn't get a vehicle up there, so we carried the gliders up 2.9 miles up the mountain to the top. Cloud base was about maybe 50 feet above launch, and it was soarable. It was blowing in just absolutely beautifully. I took off, and I'm getting chill bumps just thinking about it. And these were great big snowflakes, super quiet, but you're just flying along there at 18, 19 miles an hour, and these big giant flakes just coming at you. And all you could hear was the sound of the flakes hitting the sail, and it was, wow. I mean, if I had a day to list some of my coolest, funnest, bestest flights, it'd take me a day.
But truly, we are sailors of the skies. When people ask me, what am I doing out there? Doesn't it get boring? No, I'm sailing. Some days I just sail right back and forth right here in front of launch, but there's other days I'm sailing across the valley, and it's just like a sailor. I'm working the air, and I'm covering ground, and I'm plotting my course. And so to me, it's a little bit of a remiss that name didn't catch on more, because I think that would have given us a somewhat different image over the years.
Like, what's the difference between hang gliding and paragliding, right? Like, why does paragliding seem more appealing? And for those of us who are in the sport, we know why, because it's easier to carry around, and it's easier to carry around.
Now I'm absolutely a free flight person, bilingual. So paragliding, hang gliding, which one you want to do, how you want to do it that day. And I'm really meeting a lot of paraglider pilots. It's a different world. It is a different world. It's very much more independent in the paragliding, and very much a lot more buddy system in the hang gliding.
You know, our air sports, you know, they're birds of a feather and we should flock together kind of thing.
Oh, we love paragliders. They mark lift, so
yes,
well, we're gonna go with it.
We understand that we're all together in this sport, this free flight sport, and there's a lot of transition people who have gone from a hang glider now they're flying paragliders, okay, and they won't come back to hang gliding, okay.
But we have so much in common. You know, my background is hang gliding, but I'm a paraglider pilot now. That's all I've flown in the last 5-6 years. The mentality, the skill set, the intuition, it's exactly the same. It's a different machine, you fly it different, and you learn to appreciate different qualities of the air.
About 3 years ago, he asked me if I could build a launch that P2 pilots, new pilots, could launch off of, and I said I thought I could. We had no engineering plans. We had no plan really besides just keep removing rock until it worked. And 14 months later, it's 3/4 of the way done. It was a great feeling, and to see other people use it, you know, that's the greatest feeling. It makes all those hours worth it.
Just something about this place in the mountain that people would come up on weekends that didn't, they knew they weren't going to get to fly. It was just being around here. It just, this mountain brings you in and people don't leave.
You know, Matt was selling the sport of hang gliding, but Christian was selling the lifestyle of hang gliding.
That's another interesting story is when I got here, I lived in a tent, and then I bought a trailer and built a deck. And we used to do grill outs on the weekend. And it got so popular I had to expand my deck. And every weekend we'd do grill outs. And then it got so popular we had to do it in the pavilion. And eventually it just got bigger and bigger. So I actually started all the weekend stuff doing that. And then Doris eventually took it over.
We bought all these boxes of hot dogs and hamburgers. We must have had 350 hamburgers and hot dogs. And we did a cookout, and everybody was just, they thought it was the greatest thing ever. So the following Saturday, they said, do you have any more of those left? And we said, sure, and we cooked them again. And when we ran out of the hot dogs and hamburgers, Mongo was one of the first people, but a whole bunch of people came up, handed us $50 and said, can you go buy some more supplies and do this every Saturday? And every Saturday for almost 30 years, we fed people.
It's such a wonderful atmosphere here. If you're not flying, it's just nice to be around.
When I got here at the end of '92, there was nothing here, no condos. All we had was like a full pole barn with a Coca-Cola machine.
And we'd have parties every Saturday night. Matt said to me, how come all these people are coming up in the winter? And I said, because there's a place to go and something to do. And so he built a clubhouse.
Great seeing the bonfires and the food and the kegs, and yeah, it's pretty awesome times. I sold a lot of gliders on those nights too.
And like I said earlier, it's not necessarily the flying, which is great, but the camaraderie of the people. They're fascinating, they're exciting, they're from all over, and you grow here.
Because you do have a diversity of people here, from doctors, lawyers, sheetrockers.
It's all the love that you get when you become a part of this community.
And we got hooked to that. It just became like a family, like an extended family. I went through cancer, and so I had to come one day, and it was actually very shocking to me to tell them, because it was like telling my family, I have cancer and I'm gonna leave you and I don't know what's gonna happen. And everybody was crying with me, and we were all hugging, you know, with Matt and Mike and just everybody. You know, fast forward 3 years, I'm fine. We came back and we've been flying. But throughout the entire experience, everybody was just so special and just loving, you know, like so much love that we got back from them. So no, it's not, besides the flying, people are just so special here, and we have made so many good friends.
So this is really a fun place. Matt Tabor's, no doubt. Without him and his contributions, I don't think this sport would be what it is. It'd be here, but it wouldn't be this.
This place is, it's an institution. It's important, and hang gliding wouldn't be what it is without this place.
A hell of a thing that he built here. You know, a lot of people used to call it the other Magic Kingdom, you know, and it really is. That's where grown kids go to play.
Hang gliding really did kind of save my life going through that divorce and the next few turbulent years. I was tired of traveling by myself and playing music by myself, and really just, I'd been on the road for almost 20 years at that point, having a talk just like this, sitting talking with my friend Igor, and he said, well, if you had $1 million and you could do anything in the world, what would you do? And I literally remember thinking and saying, well, it would be pretty cool if they paid me to fly. I went to the Mesa Pilot Development Program in Farmington, New Mexico, and in 2003 was hired at Mesa Airlines, a regional where I flew turboprops for United Express. Then I flew larger jets for US Airways and Frontier Airlines, and in 2012 I moved to Macau and flew a private jet for a casino mogul. Then I flew a private jet for a Chinese billionaire out of Beijing. These days, I'm flying a private jet based in Aspen, Colorado, and feeling very, very grateful for hang gliding.
Oh, Matt's done an amazing thing for the sport, absolutely. And Robin. He hasn't done it by himself.
She's up there every day too. She's managing the money and the people, and she has strong relationships with the clients, and you know, this is her life too. And she's built this place as well. Oh, I mean, it's a true partnership, you know? Like, she's the other half.
Oh, and Robin's the engine behind all the paperwork, the bookwork, the payroll, everything, all of that stuff, you know. And again, he didn't do it by himself.
You know, the old saying goes, if you do something you love for work, you never work a day in your life. So I found that to be somewhat true.
Sometimes we take it for granted. You know, it's there in our backyard. We can do it anytime we want to. But if it disappears, you know, I mean, that's it.
I kid around with Matt every once in a while. He'll complain and he'll say, well, you know, I have to take all this and people are complaining, blah, blah. And I look at him and say, Matt, it's wonderful. You're a benevolent dictator, and that is the most efficient form of government. I said, we don't have a club where we get at each other. We have you.
Paragliding's just getting a good start. It's had the school open now for the 3rd season, and instructors are doing well. The students are doing real well, and we're getting a lot of interest. And hang gliding, surprisingly, you know, I hear it's supposed to be dying everywhere, but we get a ton of interest, more than we can take care of here.
If it wasn't for Lookout Mountain Flight Park and the amount of students we process and put into the sport, the number of people in the sport would be just a blip of what it is now.
Oh, shoot, I want to share everything we've learned with anybody that's interested.
I think his struggles probably deal with putting up with people like me who want to buy something and get it real cheap, okay? So,
but, you know, if it's going to continue on, I've lost so many friends from illnesses that are younger than I am that, you know, you just never know what tomorrow brings, and I'd like to try to protect it when I can, while I can. I don't know what's going to work out best, but I'd like to be able to be involved in teaching, and I'd like to be involved in a less demanding role than I've had. So that's what the future looks like for me.
Part of what Matt has done is not just want it because of the business, but it's real important to him that the sport keeps going.
Now we're doing, depending on the year and the weather, we're probably doing between 3,500 and 4,000 tandem flights a year, which is probably more than anybody else in the country.
I don't see hang gliding going down.
Well, I'll mention this. You know, if the subject of hang gliding comes up and say, oh, you hang glide? I said, you know, yeah. And they say, oh, I would never do that. And I say, well, great, because that just leaves more room up there for us crazy people.
Clear. Nice, yeah.
It's a completely different feeling. When you run off that cliff under the hang glider, you don't see the wing. That's the most amazing thing about hang gliding is you're laying down like in a dream with your arms out. You don't really see the wing. It's just you, your body, with nothing between you and the ground but air. But you don't feel that as a sense of being afraid of falling. You feel that as freedom.
My take is that on a soul level, Matt is here to advance freedom.
And I think I've grown so much from the experience of hang gliding. It has made me such a mature person.
I can't think of anything in life quite like this. This is a pretty big one.
Hang gliding is getting up to 6,000 feet, tasting the clouds, flying with the birds. It's just the most amazing thing I've done in my life.
It's kind of like surfing and finding that perfect wave, except the wave is invisible.
start running and then your foot is not touching the ground anymore, and that feeling just fills me up. Even if I don't, do amazing flights or anything, it's just that feeling. It's everything.
I will add one more thing. With my experience with the cancer, I always say that hang gliding to me was healing. Just being around this place, it just, the whole experience to me, instead of being something that is dreadful and scary, it's something that you enjoy so deeply to such a personal level that to me it was pure healing.
It's something so enjoyable you can't remember exactly what it's like unless you're doing it. But you do remember it's the most fun you've ever had with or without your clothes on.
There's no other mode of flight that is any better.
If you go skydiving or in a plane or whatever, you can get that view, and that's great, and I love that, but having it all under your own control and being able to go up and down and float around and then land and then go fly again, that to me is like what being like a bird is like.
As we says, there is a Pashto poem by the Ghani Khan who says, "Ziyawmashan lewanto biyam da hawa pa as paregam." Intoxicated craziness, that's how you will translate it. I'm in intoxicated craziness and I'm flying on the winds.
And since that first time my feet left the ground, I've never had another flying dream, not one. It's been very interesting, but once I could actually fly, I no longer had to dream about flying.
Hang glider man, he loves to fly. Hang glider man, he loves the wind and the sky. Hang glider man, he loves to fly. Look how he flies. Hang glider man, he loves the wind, he loves the sky. How he loves the sky. And his lady friend, oh how she loves him. Afraid he might die and fall from the sky. Here comes a gust of wind, there he's hooking up again. Off the west brow he's gonna fly, he's gonna fly. And his friends Sam and Ned, they're gonna help him catch the wind, hang him in the sky.